Good morning, Professor Mead. Ben here. I just want to basically run an experiment today and run it in the form of a message to you. It'll take a little bit of preliminary explanation, but I'm going to take for granted that you can tell by the sound of my voice that I'm calm and not, in an anxiety-ridden state of mind. Although I have been, like so many people, this past year, most of the time, dealing with intense anxiety, but and for good reason, of course. But so the first thing I want to point out is that I'm aware that in your universe of experience with musicians, I am but a tiny point in the pointillist painting, the George Seurat, masterpiece that includes far larger and more interesting points than me. Like, I'm fully aware, of course, of that. However, in my painting, that it's just one dot. It's you. It's a minimalist painting. Like, I assume your experiential painting is, a George Seurat masterpiece, and there's all of these points of interest. But if I turn around and say, okay, here's my painting, it's just a minimalist dot. It's like a very prominent and very interesting dot, but that's Professor Mead. It's just one person. You are the only person that I've ever met who has helped me at a psychological level, meaning like offered me actual therapeutic support. Many people have offered me material support and well-meaning statements, right? But they're not actually addressing anything of fundamental significance for me as a human being. You're the only person to do that. So that's awkward, like, I'm aware that the significance of you in my life is asymmetric. I just hope that you can bear that in mind, that I'm aware of that in what I'm saying here. But the next point I want to contemplate, I'm going to go on a little walk here, is that as I'm sure you know, at least in theory, perhaps not in practice, studies show, it can be demonstrated empirically that children tend to be, quote-unquote, smarter than adults, actually, statistically speaking. Meaning what? Meaning children learn faster, they learn more broadly, and they have more profound and deep insights, and more creative, original insights. And this is a pattern that extends throughout all of human history. It's not a recent development. It's not something novel within a given time frame. This is a basically universal feature, it would seem, of human development. Which is why, of course, this goes for Archimedes, it goes for Newton, it goes for Alexander Grothendieck, and now, today, it appears to be going the same for Shinichi Mochizuki, who is a Japanese mathematician who, I'm just going to pause here, he developed an answer to Grothendieck, firstly a solution to the Grothendieck conjecture in Annabellian geometry, and has claimed to, by way of inventing what he calls intra-universal Teichmuller theory, claims to have answered not only the ABC conjecture, but just like Grothendieck before him, all of mathematics, basically. And just like Grothendieck before him, he has no interest in talking to human beings now, right? Like, he's technically offered $1 million prize, he has no interest. People are like, please explain this to us. He has no interest in doing that. He explained it the best he could for years to 12 people, which is the same number as the disciples, of course. I'm not reading into that, but just there appears to be a kind of pattern here. Grothendieck before him explained, his vision of category theory and algebraic topology, and then put on a monastic robe and tended to goats in the hillside and said, don't talk to me anymore, like he had it with human beings. It appears to be the same thing with Shinichi Mochizuki, where the global mathematical community not only can't yet understand his theory enough to see if he's correct, but due to the Buddhist culture of Kyoto, Japan, where he teaches, and it seeming like a religious cult in a sort of general sense, nobody can tell, and they're inevitably suspicious regarding whether he is, a brilliant mathematician who just became a cult leader and kind of went off the deep end. Because it's just 12 people who say that they understand, and they can't explain it either. There's sort of, people. There's a German mathematician who has challenged the theory, claiming that he's found a flaw, but also admitting that he needs further, explanation to know whether he's correct in pointing that out himself. That's how mathematics works. You need a community effort, really, to develop a true proof. And the only real inroad to this being proposed is machine learning, of course. That's with everything. So, that brings me to my main point, which is this, and I know that you don't need me to explain this any further. It began, not literally, but just making a point, it began with, who cares if you listen? Right? The leaders of that generation rallied around that cry. Then your generation, you issued the cry that fewer people rallied around, right? Which is, why do you care what I write? And, orthodox people emerge, like Gunther Schuller, not to put him on the chopping block or anything, but, people like that to challenge this, but you stuck to your guns and you're like, no, this is the path I'm going down. Then my generation emerges, and at least for me, I can speak for myself, I'm saying, yes, who cares if you listen, is valid. Professor Mead's rallying cry, why do you care what I write? That's valid. And then, okay, it's my turn, my generation. What is my vision of this landscape? Well, as you can see, that's why I went out at this time of day. Well, this is basically my vision as a child of what lays before me. It does not look any different than the darkened, fog-covered sky you see above. So the piece that represented this first for me as a child was, I called it L'escalier sans matre. My French is not, it's terrible. But L'escalier sans matre. Bit of a pun. Nobody seemed to understand the pun. What was I saying there? I'm looking back at the 20th century and trying to review, okay, what do we got here? And my conclusion is we got too much. Like, this is way too much. This is like a massive jungle within a jungle within a jungle, an ocean within an ocean within an ocean of human creativity. We are not catching up. So, like, at the same time that I'm looking back at the 20th century in awe, I'm looking at my generation with not misanthropic disgust, but with ethical concern. I'm like, we are not catching up to this. There's just no way. We are in decline. Civilizationally, but also, intellectually, and in terms of traumatic stress and cognitive just ability. Like, we're not cutting the mustard if our task is to comprehend all of this and pull a Bach, pull a Beethoven out of our hat. Or for that matter, a Professor Mead out of our hat. Like, I tried pulling Professor Mead out of my hat, as it were. And I can't do it. I've written symphonies and, tried writing concerto-type pieces inspired by you. And what I write is not ever going to be played because I can't keep up with the social demands of what would be required of me to form social capital. And, this isn't about me, what I'm saying. But that was my vision. So my vision is expressed by saying, not only who cares whether you listen, not only who cares, or why do you care what I write, but why am I writing anything out at all? Why am I recording anything? Why am I sharing written music? Why am I sharing recordings of music? Why am I externalizing any of my musical ideas? What is the point? Because increasingly I'm told that people are not interested, either they're not capable of understanding, or it's too overwhelming because they're too already inundated with traumatic stress, right? Like they cannot bear this, to the point where it seems like I'm dosing people involuntarily with, chemicals that are too powerful for them. My friend Jonathan, who's passed away, that's basically what he had to tell me. He's like, Ben, I love you, and I want to support your music, but I can't handle this. Like what you're creating is overwhelming me. And I'm thinking, Jonathan, how is that possible? Look at the 20th century. Look at what Professor Mead was processing. And he's telling me, yeah, I'm not on that level. And so I'm like, okay, I got to find somebody on this level. I mean, who is there? There isn't anyone. Whoever's out there, they are too busy fighting for their life. And that's just the fact of the matter. So if my vision is, why write at all? Who cares if you listen? Why do you care what I write? Why write at all? I'm listening to the children that no one's listening to, basically, because I've always been convinced that children are smarter in general than adults. Like, I'm always more interested in what they have to say. And I'm very disturbed by what I hear and see. Because what they're saying is, we don't give a flying fuck about music. We're not thinking about music whatsoever. What are they thinking about? The opium of the masses, which at this point, due to synthetic chemistry, is just fentanyl. I mean, it's literally, unfortunately, the opiate of the masses is an opiate. It's fentanyl. That's not a joke. That's just an observation. And it's in the news, and everyone's rallying around various opinions about fentanyl, but no one seems to be listening to the children yet again, of course, because, yet again, children are smarter. So, Professor Mead. This is the one degree I was able to get. It's a CNC machinist certificate from the community college. Throwing that in the dumpster. I'm not doing this with any malice or anything. I'm just trying to make a point. What is this? Salt and Light. This is a song cycle written for my mother for piano and baritone. I don't know how many. It's going to be a while. I'm not even sure. That's another song cycle. Into the bin. What else we got? It's the song cycle, the last few movements. Gonna have a few sonatas coming up. What do we got? Composition for cello. Into the bin. This is one of my piano pieces that I premiered at U of M. I'm gonna speed this up. Sonata for violin and piano. There's a symphony in here. There's a 2 piano 4-hand study. I'm not throwing anyone else's music out, just to be clear. I'm not trying to offend anyone, but trio. I got a trio. What is this? 3 lyric fragments that I wrote for you, Professor Mead. I don't mean any offense by doing this, of course. This is my string quartet. Another song cycle. What do we got? Sonata for piano. You got a copy of that one, so no harm done. This is another duo. This is a duo piece. That's into Then there's a chamber symphony somewhere in there. But anyway, I'm sure you see my point. There is a sense in which I regret wasting time on all of those compositions. I do think there is a sense in which they're but a manifestation not of my talent, but of my moral cowardice formerly in life. And this is my music now. Is basically talking about antinatalism, adoption theory, trying to get people to listen to kids and take their suffering seriously, and thinking about euthanasia law and what is going on with the increase in suicide rates across the world, but especially among young people all around me. I'm about to, later today, write Joel David Hampkins. He's a head professor of mathematical philosophy at Oxford, about my so-called theory of the Pressburger paradox. I'll do my best to explain and see if he responds. But what I'm doing there is the same thing that the machine learning systems are now doing in telling the computer scientist researchers that even these advanced machines don't understand the underlying intuition for addition, like supposedly the simplest of mathematical operations. Well, that's exactly what my writings on the Pressburger paradox concerns. So really what I'm trying to bring up with Joel David Hampkins is the question of, hey, is anyone paying attention to this? Is anyone listening? Because, like, I'm just some numbskull. I mean, I'm not trying to put myself down, but I'm just saying there are children out there who are way more gifted mentally than I'll ever be and never have been. So they are for sure thinking about this, and if I can figure this out, that's an ethical problem, not a mathematical problem. Like, that's an ethics concern. But if I find anything out that's of interest from Joel David Hampkins, he's getting some more notoriety, it seems, like podcasts and whatnot. I think I'll share it with you, Professor Mead, maybe. But regardless, I hope you're well. I hope this isn't, like, overly alarming. It's going to be a little alarming. I'm just going to end with the night sky here, though, for the obvious reason. Okay, namaste.